Hey, rookies, and welcome back to the Rookie Farmer Podcast. This is the home of the dreamers, the schemers, and the hustlers in small scale agriculture. I am your host, Alec Smith of Crop Culture Farm in New Bern, Georgia. Let's mix things up a little bit this episode. In the last two episodes, we had some interviews with amazing farmers, really getting into some awesome content. But I want to take a minute, slow things down. Let's take an episode and let's just lay the foundation of what this podcast is going to be. This is new for me. This is new for you. So I wanted to just take a chance and give you guys the full rundown of what you can expect and what you will be getting in the future from the Rookie Farmer Podcast. So before we go any further, we should ask the question, what is the Rookie Farmer Podcast? Let's give you a little bit of backstory. This was birthed out of a previous podcast, some of which you may have listened to and is what brought you here. And that was the Farm Startup series that I did with Diego Footer over on the Farm Small, Farm Smart podcast that he does through Modern Grower. Now, I have been a big fan of Diego's for a long time. I've listened to Farm Small, Farm Smart, Grass Fed Life, The Urban Farmer, all of the different podcasts since probably 2014, 2015. And it was a really awesome opportunity that I had to get to sit down and talk with Diego. I began my farm in late 2023. And around that time, I had this idea, you know what? It would be awesome to chronicle the journey, follow along with a farmer who's never done this before, and just get the day to day, month to month, year to year understanding of what it actually takes to start a farm and follow someone for a full year. So Diego was doing these drunk ideas where he was throwing out these random odd ideas, and it felt like the perfect opportunity to say, hey, here's my drunk idea. You should do a podcast with me. You don't know me. I just started farming, but we should follow the journey of what this farm can become and what it will become, hopefully, by doing regular episodes, telling people about what this journey looks like from start to not finish, but at least finishing out a full year. And so that's what we did. We started with one episode that we did in November of 23. And then in January of 24, we jumped in with weekly episodes that you guys enjoyed from January through December, 36 in total episodes of Farm Startup. Now, if you haven't listened to that, not that it's required listening, but I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to those episodes. It is chock full of amazing information. And I'm not just saying that because it's information that I gained. Diego and I go into some really deep conversations about the mental health of farming, into the finances of farming, what it actually takes to start at a farmer's market for the first time. What does it actually look like to build out and expand production throughout a season? There are so many different things that we handle in that episode, and that series that we did, excuse me. And there is just a treasure trove of information that even me, myself, will probably need to go back through and listen to and take some notes to remember the journey that I've come and to just really understand what it actually takes to do this. So, like I said, highly encourage you go back and listen to it again. Now, with that, moving forward, my dream has always been to educate and inspire and inform other people. In a past life, I did personal development and sort of coaching. And so I loved being able to train and encourage people in pursuing their goals and pursuing their dreams. And it's no different today. I'd love to take all the information that's in my brain, that's in my head, and try and distill it down to something that makes sense and then present that to other people. And hopefully it will better their life. And this podcast is just an extension of that. It's really no different. I just want to inspire and educate and inform new and aspiring growers to enter into this small scale farming world. It's totally different. It's totally new. It's not a regular 9 to 5 desk job. It's not a thing that you can just follow the A, B, C, D steps and learn how to do it. there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of things that are totally dependent upon the weather and on your climate and on your markets. And so there's so much information that can be gained and can be learned before you begin to take those first steps. Or maybe you've taken steps 1 and 2, and now you're moving on to 3 and 4, and you just want to have some reassurance that you're taking the necessary steps. And those are the things that we want to provide with you. That's the reason why we've called this the Rookie Farmer Podcast. Anybody can listen to it, whether you're a veteran or you're just a home grower, or maybe you just have a lot of windshield time and you wanted another podcast to add to the list. Whoever you may be, it's open to anyone, but we're primarily looking at you, the rookie farmer. That's who we want this podcast to go out to. So if you are thinking about starting a farm, maybe you already have a piece of land or you're selling some stuff to friends and family out of your garden and you're thinking, maybe I can expand production. This is the podcast for you. We want to help you. We want to encourage you, and we want to inspire you to take those next steps to starting your farm so that you can become another piece of the puzzle that is feeding our nation, our world, our communities. No matter how big or how small you think, you are a piece that is a part of this food system, and being able to do it on a small local level primarily, which is who we're looking at, small local farmers. And so we just want to be a venue for you. We want to be a place where you can learn, where you can get some new ideas. Maybe you can hear from somebody that's in your area and you can connect with them directly. There's so many different ways that you can benefit from this podcast. And with that, the reason why we settled on the name Rookie Farmer Podcast is not because it's only for people who are in their first year. It was really inspired after our first interview we did with Zach Richards of Levity Farm. And he made an amazing comment where he said, I'm in my 8th season and every year is my rookie year. And that was the light bulb moment. I had already been thinking about the name for the podcast, and he just solidified it right then and there. That even if you've been doing this 8 years or you've been doing this for 8 hours and anywhere in between, this year gets to be your rookie year. This is my 2nd year on the farm, and this gets to be my new rookie year. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to gain. And we get to be rookies together, which is why I'll always address you at the beginning of every episode as a rookie. It can be humbling. It can be encouraging. And no matter which way it falls for you, it is a term of endearment. And it's a way to say we're all in this together. We're all at the same place, and we're going to charge ahead, and we're going to change this food system. We're going to revolutionize agriculture together, hand in hand, rookie and rookie, as we pursue our dreams of growing food on the land and providing it to the people of our community. Now, the question is, what will the Rookie Farmer Podcast look like? Now that you understand sort of the heart and the big picture of why we're doing this, let's talk about what it's going to look like. So we will be primarily doing interviews from veteran farmers, and we'll be able to glean from their years of experience and from all of the wisdom that they've gained through that time. I can't tell you how much wisdom and how much information can be received from fellow farmers who have been doing this far longer than we have. Sometimes it's a guy that's been doing it since the year you were born, like the farm that I work at, on top of working on my own farm. Or if it's just the guy that's 2 seasons ahead of you who has 2 more years of experience and can say, I've been in your shoes really recently. Here's what you can expect. Hearing from veteran farmers is an invaluable resource, and we want to bring you as many interviews from those farmers as possible so that we can learn from their mistakes, we can glean from their wisdom, and it can make us better farmers. You're also going to be hearing from some industry professionals, people like soil agronomists, seed sales reps for seed companies, people who maybe work with the NRCS or a farm market manager. There's lots of different people in the industry that I'm going to be reaching out to and we're going to be doing interviews with, because there's a lot of nuanced parts of this whole agricultural world, from the seed side and the testing side, like I had mentioned, to what does it actually take to build a high tunnel. Maybe we can interview some people that are in the greenhouse space, and we can understand what exactly we need to be thinking about when it comes to buying a tunnel. Or people that work for the USDA. Maybe we have an opportunity to talk with someone who is in the certification process with USDA organic or certified naturally grown. Stay tuned for some of those. And we can understand what are the things that we need to be keeping in mind as we're starting our farm if we want to go the certified farm route. And then we have things on the sales side. I'm hoping that we can talk to some chefs to understand from the chef and restaurant perspective, what do farmers need to know and what do farmers need to be thinking about when they approach a restaurant about selling to them? What are the things that chefs are really looking for? What are the ways that we can talk to them? And when are the times that we can stop into the restaurant to chat with them? These are all questions that for some farmers, I think it kind of becomes an assumed thing. We've been doing this for so long, or even if we've been doing it for just a short amount of time, we sort of just remember what to do every single time and it becomes muscle memory. But if you're a brand new farmer or you're thinking about getting into this space, it might be a totally new idea. So whatever it may be, we want to demystify the nuanced aspects of the farming world. So we'll be talking to some amazing industry professionals. And we also want to interview some fellow rookie farmers. If you listen to the previous interview we did with Gabby Foltz of Dusty Dog Gardens, she's just getting started. She sold a little bit from her farm last year to a farmer's market, but this year she's moving to a new piece of property. She's incorporating animals. She's going to be selling to a food co-op. It is a totally new world that she's going to be stepping into. Very similar to the whole new world that I stepped into last year starting our farm. And I want to interview those people. I want to interview the fellow rookies because, yes, it's great to glean as much wisdom as we can from the other veteran farmers and the people in the agricultural industry. But how much more inspiring and encouraging can it be to hear from other people who are in the exact same shoes that you're in, saying, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm following a dream. I have a small piece of property. I have a small amount of money to work with. It's the most relatable, understandable thing that we can all say we've been in that place, or you can say, I'm in that place right now. So those are some of the people that I also want to interview. So those are sort of the three main types of subject matters that we're going to be handling with our interviews. But we're also not going to just be doing interviews. Now, like I said before, a lot of you may be here because you listened to our series Farm Startup on the Farm Small, Farm Smart podcast. And with that, as we were giving updates of what was happening at the farm, I'm going to assume that you guys are now bought in. You guys now want to know the future of Crop Culture Farm. And so we will be doing regular updates on what's happening with the farm. How is the farm evolving? How is Crop Culture Farm growing? Where are we selling? What are our challenges? What are the areas that I'm hoping that we can strategically choose to move in this direction or in that direction? What have been the absolute train wrecks that we've had happen through the season? All of these sort of things I want to share with you, not just because it's something that I enjoy to do, but also from just a sense of transparency. Because if I make mistakes, I want you to learn from my mistakes. If I have wins, I want you to be able to replicate those wins, whatever it may be. I want to continue to share my journey of becoming a farmer throughout the years. So expect to have updates and ideas and all of the things that are happening with Crop Culture Farm, along with the interviews. And with that, I also might throw in some interesting happenings around from the farm world, like current events, ideas that I might be working on, or words of wisdom that I've discovered along the way. And we may even answer some listener questions. So if you have feedback or you have a question, although I'm not an expert, I'm simply just another rookie, I would be more than happy to tackle your questions and maybe we can all think about it together. So if that's something you're interested in, you can shoot us a DM on Instagram at the Rookie Farmer Podcast. You can put it in the comments below of this video on YouTube, or you can shoot me an email at cropculturefarm@gmail.com. So send us your questions, send me your feedback. I want to know what you think of the podcast. If you say the audio quality sucks or you have a dumb haircut, or I love the podcast, keep it going. I would love to have weekly episodes. I would love to have more interviews. I'd love to have more farm updates, whatever it may be. Send your information my way so I can make this the best podcast possible. And last but not least, let's give you an idea of what the schedule of this podcast will be. As of right now, we're planning on this being a bi-weekly podcast with a mix of the interviews and the farm blogs throughout the season. Now, why are we doing bi-weekly instead of a traditional weekly release schedule? Well, the reality of it is I'm also trying to run a farm. I am an entrepreneur just like the rest of you. I'm trying to balance running a farm, being a husband, being a father, trying to have some semblance of rest time and a social life and all of the things that come with everyday life. And I didn't want to overcommit to doing an episode every single week and then get burned out too quickly or run out of stuff to talk about, run out of interviews to give. So I figured doing it bi-weekly gives you guys a nice steady drip of content that you can enjoy throughout the season, but also making it more sustainable to ensure that I can make it to the end of the season. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's back things up a little bit and let me give you guys a little bit of an introduction to who I am. Like I said, if you've come from the other podcast, you probably have an idea, but I just want to take a little bit of time, introduce myself to the new listeners, and also maybe give you guys a little bit more in-depth understanding of who I am that maybe we didn't tackle in the other podcast. So like I said, my name is Alec. I am a new farmer. We started our farm here at Crop Culture Farm in the fall of 2023. Now, I'm also happily married to my wife, Sarah, of 10 and a half years. I have two amazing kids, 5 and 3, and they are your typical wild feral farm children. They love to play in the dirt. They love to eat kale right off the plant on their hands and knees, just like they're an animal. I absolutely love my life. It's the best life. We are in New Bern, Georgia, which is about an hour and some change east of Atlanta, just off of I-20. And we didn't come from a farming background. With my wife growing up in Mississippi, me growing up all over the country. My dad was a minister. We traveled a lot. We moved a lot. Neither of us come from a farming background. Neither of us lived on farms. Frankly, neither of us really had parents who gardened much. This was something that we came to in our adulthood. I was inspired first, like so many of us millennials, to get into this space by the books and the documentaries that were coming out sort of in the mid 2000s, 2010s. Things like Food Inc. I remember watching that and saw them interview and talk with a guy named Joel Salatin, a regenerative farmer out of Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, not West Virginia. And he totally opened my eyes to what the potential of this could be. I had a little bit of experience working on a farm at that point, but it was a conventional farm. We grew several hundred acres of tomatoes and then a couple hundred acres of peppers and so on and so forth. It was not the small, regenerative, land healing, sustainable farm that I now have. It was a large conventional farm. And I thought, this is interesting. This is fun. But I don't know if I would ever want to actually do this for the rest of my life. And it wasn't until listening to Joel Salatin talk that it really opened my eyes to this world of not only can we grow food and we can provide it for people, but it can be seen as this noble, life-giving thing that we can do, not just a job or not just this dead-end thing that we're stuck into, but it can be a purpose that drives us to change the world. And it can also heal the planet at the same time. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And then from there, it was down the YouTube rabbit hole, into books, into podcasts. And pretty quickly, I wanted to consume as much Joel Salatin information as I could. And I found myself on the YouTube channel of this little permaculture conference that happened. And they recorded a lot of the sessions, and it was called Permaculture Voices. Heard Joel Salatin talk, heard a couple of TED Talks from him. It was really great. And once I had discovered Permaculture Voices, that's really when things kicked off. Because who else was at that conference but other amazing guys like Mark Shepard? But what really changed everything was hearing a talk by a guy from Canada named Curtis Stone. And that's when I really realized not only is all this possible and it can be noble and life changing and life giving, but it can be done on a small scale and it can actually be profitable to sell food to your local community without having to have acres and acres and acres and all of the tractors and all the equipment. You can do it with human scale tools in an urban environment. And that's really when the light switched on and I realized, oh no, this is something that I can do. So years down the road, I'm consuming as much information as I can, wanting to do it. In 2017, I tried to start a farm in the city Conyers that we were living in at the time. And unfortunately, the house we were renting got sold out from underneath of us. We were forced to move right as I was getting the first crops in the ground. Um, and so we had to put that dream on hold for several more years until had moved to a new city. And at that point, I realized I still want to farm. I still want to keep this thing going. So I found an opportunity very serendipitously to work on a farm. It was a really cool story. I was having lunch with the pastor of our church and telling him, "Hey, just pray with me, come into agreement that I need to start growing food. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know if I rent a piece of property. I don't know if I just do a bigger garden in my yard, but it's time for me to start growing food. It's time for me to learn how to farm." And about that time, I look down at my phone and I have a text message from a friend, and she's sending me an Instagram link to a help wanted post from a local organic farm in the city that we were in at that time. And it just felt like all of the stars had aligned, everything had lined up perfectly for the next step. And that farm was Crystal Organic Farm, which is also here in New Bern, Georgia. So I shot them my resume, filled out the application, sent it to them, and went and showed up and just said, "Hey guys, like I'm a young, eager, and aspiring farmer, and I want to be a sponge and soak up as much information from you guys as possible." And so Nicholas and Jenny, who are absolutely near and dear to my heart, and hopefully you'll hear from them later on in this year. They brought me on the team and I started farming. And after a few months, I decided I'm ready to do this full time. I jumped on the farm crew full time. And that was in 2022. And so we're now several years later, and I have built a great relationship with them, still work on the farm a couple days a week. Um, and they opened up the opportunity and connected me with the landowner and the person who has the property that we're on now. And so we found this property. They were ready to have someone farm the land. There was some infrastructure already in place, and they were just looking for the right person. And we were looking for the right property. And we just hit it off right out the gate. It was perfect. Me and my wife felt like this is the right thing for us to do. This is the right time for us to do it. Because the reality of it is all of the support that's out there, all of the opportunities that's out there really only comes after you've been doing this for a little while. You have to build up a little bit of a rapport if you want to get any sort of assistance from the USDA or qualify for any sort of grants. And so we realized there's no better time than the present to get our feet wet. We thought we'll do this part-time for a few months, maybe for a couple of years, and then we'll be able to build things up until this can become our full-time thing. So in 2023, we launched Crop Culture Farm. Now that name was actually something that I heard in a dream. It didn't really mean much of anything. And even still to this day, the meaning of that name ebbs and flows as times change, and it means different things to me, depending on those times. But I just rolled with it because when you get something in a dream, usually it means something. And so it just seemed like the right decision to be made. So we launched Crop Culture Farm in October of 2023. And we spent that winter and the first chunk of the spring of 2024 getting everything built out, shaping our beds, forming everything together so that we could begin to sell in the spring. And that's exactly what we did. Um, we went to work tilling up the area that was full of weeds, full of random volunteer plants from the people who had been there previously. And after we tilled everything up, I shoveled out the rows one by one, creating the pathways and the raised beds. And then we started planting, probably a little too early. If I could go back and redo it again, I probably would have spent another 6 months on build out, got a lot more beds done, really established a good wash pack area so that we could start selling in the fall of 2024. But sometimes I'm a bit of a cart before the horse kind of guy. That's just my style. And we were ready to start selling. I wanted to get out there, get into the market as soon as we could. So in April of 2024, we first started at our first farmers market. Now, at this point, we had only sold a little bit here and there to friends and family, had zero sales experience on the farm. Now, granted, I had 2.5 years of farming experience under my belt working at Crystal Organic Farm. So I kind of knew what to expect quality wise. I knew what I could charge, and I knew sort of what people wanted, which gave me a really great footing. But we began to sell at that market, started out super strong, and then things sort of dwindled and sales sort of stagnated through the summer and into the fall. But we added on restaurant sales and things began to grow. And we were able to end 2024 in a really good place. We're doing our final numbers now as we're in the beginning of January, but it looks like that we are going to end up just shy of about $30,000 in gross sales for the season, which for our first year, essentially doing this part time, is mind blowing. I think my goal was $50,000, which seems sort of unattainable. So the fact that we hit 30 is kind of mind blowing. I'm extremely grateful and extremely proud of the progress that we made and what we were able to do in our first year. And I'm really excited to see what we're going to do moving forward. And now, as we move forward, we have passed the winter solstice. We've crossed into New Year's, and we are now in early January of 2025. We're smack dab in the middle of winter. Everything's new. We have a whole new year, a whole new growing season ahead of us. But let's give a little bit of an update on where things are at right now on the farm. So it's been a relatively mild winter up until this point. Had rain, we've had a few cold spells, but down here in the south, we're in zone 7A. It's not super cold, It would be a little abnormal for us to dip into low teen single digits. It might happen once every couple of years, but for the most part, mid to low 20s is about as low as we're going to get. Not really going to get much snow. Pretty mild as far as winters go around the country. And this year has been pretty mild as far as mild winters go. But I have been extremely surprised with the ability of how much we've been able to grow through the winter. I thought for sure we're going to get close to and into the time of the winter solstice, and things are just going to stop. Stuff's going to stop growing. We're not going to have anything to harvest. We're not going to have anything to sell. But it was quite the contrary. Even though our farmers market stopped the second week of December, I've been able to provide stuff to restaurants every week of the winter so far, all the way through December into the first week of January. I've been doing restaurant deliveries. Now, obviously, the quantities have been down and we don't have a farmer's market. So sales are a little bit low, but we anticipated that. But in spite of that, we don't have any 0 weeks. We're not having any weeks where we're not selling anything. Even the week of Christmas, I was able to run a delivery on the 23rd. And then the week of New Year's, I was able to run something on New Year's Eve. I've been really pleased at how much things have been able to keep up. Now, obviously, things have slowed down for sure. And I'm making copious amounts of notes because, frankly, this is our first real winter that we're growing through. So hopefully the end of 2025 into 2026, we will be far more prepared and much more ready for what we have to experience through that winter season. And even though things have slowed down, they didn't stop growing. Like I said, we were able to continue to sell stuff. Um, Another cool thing that we did was, with the help of our business investor, we were able to purchase a used 30 by 72 foot high tunnel. Now, I may use terms like high tunnel, greenhouse, hoop house, whatever those things are. All we're talking is a rigid frame structure with a thin, clear polyplastic covering over it to create some sort of a greenhouse effect so that we can extend our growing season, whether it's warming things even up, even higher in the summertime, or keeping things warm and above freezing in the wintertime. Now, in this small scale agriculture space, season extension is the name of the game. You want to be able to grow as deep into winter as humanly possible, or to be able to just increase your production into the summer months by keeping the rain off of tomatoes or off of your other nightshade crops like peppers, or just to be able to create microclimates that will allow certain things to grow better than others. And we have one tunnel right now. It's a 20 by 40 foot tunnel, and we keep that thing slap full year round, whether it has lettuce and baby greens like what's in it now, or tomatoes and cucumbers that was in the summertime. Frankly, it's just not enough space. And to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, the farm that I've come from, Crystal Organic Farm, has 20 to 30 by 96 foot high tunnels. That is, I want to say it's close to 2 acres of actual growing space that's under plastic. And that is what's necessary to keep that farm going year round without really missing much of a beat. And so one 20 by 45 foot tunnel just does not cut it anymore. So we were able to invest in getting this used high tunnel. And it should hopefully extend our season, give us more growing space to hopefully become more profitable, and maybe we can even add a couple more. We're not even looking at the equip grants that the NRCS does, which we'll talk about that another day at another time. This was just a used tunnel that we got for a pretty good deal, I'd say. It's banged up a little bit. It's a little bit of a game of Tetris, of Jenga, of a puzzle, everything all rolled into one, because there's no instruction manual with this thing. We sort of have to look at the pieces and put it all together. And it's been quite the journey so far. So far, all we have is the posts that we've driven into the ground. So we've essentially established our foundation, all 13 posts on either side. And hopefully this week, as we're expecting to experience a cold snap here in this second week of January, hoping that I'll be able to dedicate some time without a farmer's market to getting all of the pieces sort of laid out, all of the center purlins and all of the brackets exactly where they need to be, so that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to start assembling everything and getting everything up. I knew that putting up a tunnel would be a serious challenge, but man, has it become much more of like a mind-bending puzzle than I ever expected it to be. And I'm just trying to chip away a little bit at it each day that I'm out there. But this week, I'm dedicating almost all of my time to that high tunnel, so that hopefully second, third week of January, we'll be able to really tackle that. And the goal is to have it up before the end of the month, so that we can reskin that thing and we can get growing in it. Now, with that, we had mentioned doing another farmer's market that we did back in 2024. And like I said, it was a good market. It wasn't excellent. It was a perfect place for us to cut our teeth in the farming world. It was busy enough that we could pay our bills, but slow enough that we could sort of learn the ins and outs of what it actually takes to sell to people and not feel like we're disappointing customers. Now, that being said, the goal is for me to go full time here on the farm come springtime. And that just means we need more sales. Now, I can always add more restaurant sales, but that means driving an hour and some change into Atlanta, Georgia, or driving an hour to Athens, Georgia, once, maybe even twice a week, and hope to God that a restaurant will buy enough produce to make it worth it. Sometimes it isn't. You have to make the tough decision on this restaurant only wants $80 worth of stuff. Do I drive an hour for $80? And that's an hour one way. So do I drive 2 hours for $80 or do I tell them no and get zero sales? And so ideally, we only want to add restaurant sales as production allows for it. So we need to primarily be focusing on farmers market sales. But that farmers market ended at the beginning of January and doesn't start back until April. So what do? Well, we look at another market. Now, thankfully, partially because of doing the Farm Startup podcast, I had a market manager from the Athens farmers market reach out to me and say, "Hey, man, loved listening to the podcast. It's been really inspiring. And I know the guys that you're working with over at Crystal Organic. So I know that you're legit, and I would love to invite you to come and participate in the winter market that we're doing in Athens. So January, February, 9 to 1, every Saturday. We'd love to have you." So that's what I did. I signed up and went through all of the hoops to do that. And we started this week. Now, to back up a little bit, the funny thing is that I found out when I submitted the application that I had to be certified naturally grown at the least, preferably probably be USDA organic, but had to at least be certified naturally grown to participate in this market, which I love. I love the fact that they set a standard, they set a bar and say, this is the quality that we're looking for, and this is the level of excellence that we expect. And you need to meet that in order to satisfy our customers. Absolutely love it. It's really great. I wish more markets had a higher level of expectation for their growers. Here's the only problem. I wasn't certified naturally grown. And this is the week of Thanksgiving, and the market starts the first Saturday of January. Now, I was somewhat familiar with certified naturally grown, which moving forward, we'll probably just refer to it as CNG, just to save some words. But even though I was familiar with CNG, I hadn't taken any of the necessary steps to participate in the program. Now, I knew that whether it was CNG or USDA organic, I was going to be pursuing some form of certification in the future. But I was honestly putting that off for a couple of years. I just wanted to get good at growing. But with a lot of those programs, you need to have as many years as possible of growing, following the certification requirements before you can actually get certified. I know with USDA, if you're on a piece of property that was once conventional, they're looking for 3 years of organic growing with all of your notes and all of your labels and everything that you have organized so that you can prove that you've been growing organically. Now, thankfully, in my situation, there hadn't been any sort of pesticides or herbicides or chemical fertilizers on that property in the previous 3 years. And so I had a bit of a clean slate. And because I chose from the beginning that I was going to grow with certification in mind, I only used OMRI approved fertilizers, only used OMRI approved soil amendments, and did my absolute best to buy as many organic seeds as possible, knowing that this was going to be the future of the farm. And boy, am I glad that I did, because when the week of Thanksgiving comes around and they say, "Hey, we got your application. We just need to get your CNG certification." I'm like, "Oh, crap. I don't have that." Well, let's get the ball rolling then. We have to do something. So I fiercely go in, fill out the application, do that. Now, I will say this. CNG has been nothing but a joy to work with. They made things super easy. They replied to my emails lightning fast. And Kathy and the other gals that I've worked with over there have been great. But all that to be said, about the second week of December, we got our CNG certification. So now Crop Culture Farm is certified naturally grown. And if you're not familiar with CNG, go give them a look at. They're a really great organization. They're a nonprofit that follows pretty much all of the same necessary requirements for growing as the USD organic does. But there's some less hoops, less red tape to jump through, and it's peer to peer. So who comes out and does my certification? Another certified naturally grown farmer. We're not having to call in and schedule time with a professional certifier who has been trained and tested and quasi works for the government to come in and do our certification. I can actually work with another farmer who's maybe just a few steps ahead of me or is one of those veteran farmers. They can come out to the farm. Not only can they check and make sure we're doing everything properly and everything is up to snuff, but also they can give pointers and say, I love what you're doing. Maybe you should try this. Have you thought about this soil amendment? There's so many benefits to CNG on top of just less red tape, but it really creates a community. It creates a group of people that you can rally around. And frankly, it's giving its own name in the industry of being just the same level of quality and of safety and of richness that is USDA organic, but far, far easier and far less expensive for the farmer. So we were able to get our CNG certification just in time, just a couple of weeks before the farmers market started. And this Saturday, January 4th, was our very first farmers market. Now, if you ever moved around a lot as a kid or you had to change schools, you know that new kid feeling. It's not a great feeling. If you had to join a new class or whatever it may be, or maybe it was just doing a new thing, going into a new group of people for the first time, it can be a little unsettling, can be a little self-conscious because there's this established set of rules, there's this established friend group, and you're not a part of any of it. And you have to learn all of it on the fly. And everyone's looking at you like, who's the new guy? So that's what I was thinking and feeling leading up to this market. Now, thankfully, I had a year of farmers markets under my belt. I knew what our setup was going to be. I knew what we'd be able to bring. I knew about how long it would take me to get set up. I knew how to convey the message of the farm. So I'm not starting out from nothing. I have a year under my belt, but I'm just in a new place, totally new market, totally new customers. So we show up. It is freezing cold Saturday morning, literally. I think when we started setting up, it was probably about 28, 29 degrees. So we're setting up, and the wet towels that we're using to clean things off with are freezing. It was cold, 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 which typically, from my experience in the past, means cold weather, bad weather, no customers. So I wasn't feeling super confident, but thinking we're doing a winter market. So if we're doing this, then surely there must be customers because they wouldn't be coming out if there wasn't one. So we get everything set up, get to meet the other farmers, see what they're doing. Everyone was an absolute joy to work with. Esther and Brian and the whole crew with the Athens market were absolute joys to work with. And hopefully, maybe you guys will get to hear from them later on in the season, talk about sort of the behind the scenes of what it takes to run a farmer's market and what you need to know to get into said farmer's market. We do that about 9 o'clock when the market opens. Things started ramping up super quickly. I was blown away at how fast people started coming in. I'm used to people showing up early, but it's like they came and went. Needless to say, by the end of the day, we had sold out of almost anything, almost everything. I brought more to this market than I ever brought to any other farmer's market. I harvested more than I've ever harvested. Every single container, Tupperware, tote that I had that I could stick vegetables in to take, I filled every one of them. The bed of my truck, the back seats of my truck, every single space was full of as much produce as possible because I just thought, well, we're going to hope for the best and make sure that we don't run out of anything. Well, we ran out of a bunch of stuff pretty quickly. We sold out of carrots, more carrots than I'd ever sold in about an hour and a half of a 4-hour market. Uh, and there was products that I had been really hoping to be able to sell. Some Asian greens like pak choi and tatsoi that I was having a really hard time selling at the other market were suddenly flying off the table. Everyone was loving it. Oh, this is going to be so great. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to make it for dinner tonight. It was mind blowing. And we went from having an entire pickup truck bed and the entire backseat of a pickup truck full of containers to one large tote and one small tote of vegetables to take back with us. I was completely blown away at how much we were able to sell and how much people gave us feedback on the way things looked and all that. It was great. We ended up doing about $1,100 in sales on that Saturday market. And I've never sold that much at a market before. I think my previous record was about $750. So to do $1,100, pushing close to 1,200 was absolutely mind blowing. And it made me realize, all right, if we stay here, we can do this. I don't have to go and push restaurant sales too much to make ends meet. Like we can settle in and do this market and we can really grow this thing. We can make this farm thing a reality. So it was extremely encouraging. Now, I will say this, because it is winter and because so much of this is still unknown, I decided to do this every other week through the winter time. So I'm going to be going, I went this Saturday, I'm going to take a Saturday off, do the next Saturday. And part of that was because I wanted to make sure that I could bring as much product as possible because I'd much rather be there every other week and sell out of $1,200 worth of stuff as opposed to show up every single week and maybe only have $700 worth of stuff. And it gives me a little bit of time to recoup because not until Christmas had I had a Saturday off since April. Those of you guys who are in the farmers market game, you know, as amazing as farmers markets can be, it can also be a huge, huge labor of love. It is a lot of work. And being able to have a Saturday off is such a joy and such a treat now. So that's why we decided to go every other Saturday. So we'll take a week off, be back the third Saturday in January, and then first Saturday in February, and so on and so forth. And hopefully we'll be able to join the full market come March. Really excited about that. But that also means that we have to ramp up production now. I knew that we needed to be able to grow more, but after seeing what was possible with this market, I realized we have to grow more now. I need to be spending as much of my time focused on ramping up production. That means every empty bed has to have something in it now. Every space that doesn't have beds, we need to start planning for what's going to be the layout. How long are these beds going to be? We need to start getting them cover cropped. We need to plan on getting them amended because we need to ramp up production as soon as we possibly can if we want to be able to meet the demand of this market and grow this business. It was one of those things where I knew it was coming and then all of a sudden it was here and it was time to rock and roll. So we will be spending the next several months really ramping up production. That'll probably be a big focus of these farm updates of new beds, new tunnel, all of the various things that come with ramping up production so that we can increase sales. Now, one thing that we did that has really been our saving grace is because we have two kids and because we are able to write off so much because we have a business and we live here on the property and all of that, we still get a pretty decent tax return at the end of the year. So we took our tax return from 2023 and we squirreled that away. We said we're going to do a couple of repairs on our vehicles and then we're not going to touch that money. That is going to be our money to get us through winter if sales slump, which they have a little bit. So we can continue to pay our bills. We don't have to stress about it. We don't have to wonder if I have to go find an off-farm job to make it through winter. We can just continue doing what we're doing. And then also it gives us our capital that we can inject at the beginning of this year, 2025, so that we can buy seed, we can buy soil amendments, and now we can buy the necessary little bits of hardware and new greenhouse plastic for this new high tunnel. And so I would highly recommend that if you have the opportunity to come into some money, whether it's a tax return or a grant or whatever, as tempting as it might be to just spend it immediately, think about sitting on it for a minute, not never spending it, but just say, let it sit in the bank account for just a little while and let life happen a little bit. Because sometimes when life happens a little bit, it rearranges your priorities. I was ready to blow all of it on new equipment, everything in December. And my amazing, wonderful wife, who is much more of a slow and steady person than I am, said, let's just sit back, let's wait, let's see. And thankfully we did, because I didn't know that we were going to be getting a greenhouse. I didn't know that we were going to need to ramp up production like we did. I was going to try and refine and retool the production that we were doing And now I have to spend more money on amendments and seed and greenhouse material than what I was ever anticipating I needed to do. So because of that, we're going to inject the majority of our new capital for this year into those things. And I also want to try to give you guys as many numbers as possible. I want to be real with you. I'm going to give you guys sales. This is how much we've sold this month. This is how much things have cost this month, so on and so forth. Because the most transparency I can give you is going to give you guys the best understanding of what is possible in this game. So with that being said, I'm hoping and budgeting to spend about $2,500 between seed and plastic and soil amendments. Now that is on the conservative side. We will probably spend more on all of that stuff throughout the season. But right now, with sort of the small nest egg that we have to kind of jumpstart the beginning of 2025, we are planning on budgeting about $700 in seed. That'll be through companies like Johnny's, High Mowing, maybe a few other ones. There's a couple that I've thought about working with. We'll just see. We'll see moving forward. That also means about $700 in greenhouse plastic for one greenhouse. That's going to be a big expense, but that's going to be an opportunity for us to really increase production and to increase high quality production through that high tunnel. And that leaves us with about $1,100 to spend on amendments. If there's one thing that I wish I would have invested more in 2024, it would have been in the soil. Did a lot of work doing things no-till, trying to do things like compost tea and foliar feeding. But the truth is, I wish I would have been able to inject more nutrients into the soil through simple things like feather meal, bone meal, blood meal, so on and so forth. All of your standard organic implements. And that's the goal for this year. I want to really be able to give my soil as much fertility as possible through compost, through all of those different elements, things that our soil test is saying that we're deficient in. I really want to be able to just make it be the best soil that's possible from the beginning, so that as we begin to build the microbes in the soil, our soil aggregate becomes much better and we're able to incorporate more organic matter, that it's starting with a great base so that this will be the worst soil that we ever work with and it gets better year after year. And so we want to try to spend a lot. I'll probably end up spending more on all of those things and we'll give updates on that throughout the season. But as of now, those are the numbers. Now, there is our farm update for early January on 2025. Now, I'll be incorporating these farm blogs about once a month. So expect to get another one of these sometime at the beginning of February. We'll give some updates on where the farmers market's at, how the high tunnel construction is gone, and what we've been spending our money on and what sort of things are we putting in the ground at the end of winter. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for entertaining me, talking to you for all of this time. I really enjoy getting to do these farm updates and just getting to talk with you directly. I love my interviews. I love getting to talk shop with other farmers, but there's just something special about getting to talk with you directly, as if you and I are having an individual conversation. So thank you to Diego and everyone at Modern Grower for making this possible. I will never stop being grateful for all the work that you guys have done, laying the foundation for us to do this podcast. So thank you so much. If you want to check out any of the other shows, things like the Growing Microgreens podcast, Carrot Cash Flow, Farm Small, Farm Smart, all those different podcasts, everything on the Modern Grower Podcast Network, you can go check those out. Watch the videos on YouTube. You can see them in your podcast app, on Spotify. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find all these Modern Grower shows along with the Rookie Farmer podcast. And just remember, we're not doing this to make money, and we're not charging you anything for this content. We want to make this free to the public with no paywalls, no subscription, no pay to play, because we believe in value for value. Now, that means we are providing you with value. And if you feel like you're getting value, we would hope that you could kick some of that value back toward us. So if you would like, please send $1, send $10, whatever it may be, kick a little bit of that value back our way by sending us a tip saying, hey, you guys are doing a great job. This is what I feel like this is worth. And by you doing that, it allows us to continue to make these shows week after week. I want to be able to upgrade camera equipment. I want to upgrade mic quality. I want to be able to build a website for this so that you guys can interact with us there, go back and watch previous episodes. We can put different links in there for you to be able to go get the resources from the interviews that we have. All of these different things require capital, they require money. So if these are things that you want to see a reality, send some of that value back our way monetarily. So you can go to Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, and look for at Crop Culture Farm in there, and you can send us a little bit of money if this is providing you with any value. Once again, I'm Alec Smith of Crop Culture Farm, and you are listening to the Rookie Farmer Podcast. We'll see you next time.